Hey, Lot, are you there for NVIDIA today?
No, I'm just here as me.
Okay.
I wasn't told else.
No, that's cool. I was just double checking. You're always welcome. You know that.
Hi guys, this is Dhruv. I'm joining from ARM, and I think this is the first time I'm joining. So I recently came in.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you.
All right. We're accumulating people. I mean, it's the first week back from the holidays for most people, so it's especially in the US, with the winter break that most companies take, it's interesting to get rolling again. All right, we're at critical mass. Um, be nice to have Dan Daly on as well, but why don't we go ahead and get started? So, Happy New Year, everyone. First meeting of 2024, and I have a few. There are a few agenda items that I have. Does anyone else have anything else they want to cover today? Okay. We're going to try. I think Julie is going to join uh, in a bit, and we can talk a bit more about life cycle and provisioning. We had an abbreviated version of it at the end of the year. Um, all right. So first one is for the there's Mercha. So the first one is for the EVM project. We decided to just go ahead and create a repo. So you can see in the Slack chat that that's been done. We did that yesterday, as opposed to trying to use the POC repo. And so we'll work that way. So that that got resolved, and again, the branch merge is fine, as we discussed in December. Second one is, we've got 3 maintainers right now. That's not enough. We've had some interest from a couple of additional people, so we'll get them involved in some reviews and get them approved. We might want to revisit our maintainer policy and take into account other background that people have, as opposed to so that we can get a bit more critical mass sooner. So I'm talking to Mark Sanders about that, and we'll see if we want to propose modest changes to the maintainer admissions policy, again, so that we can onboard a couple or 3 people faster to spread the work out. And I think that'll make certain things smoother. Yes, Stephen.
Hey, so I spent some time talking with some people on the Red Hat side in our open source program office and some others, just to get some feedback on this approach. And the response I got was that while having more maintainers might be nice, that's not the actual problem that we have.
Okay.
The actual problem that we have is that we need reviewers. So think of reviewers as people who are trusted enough to give a quality review for a given repo, not necessarily a maintainer for the whole project.
Oh, okay, good. That's a fair point. Because we have been conflating those roles, right?
Yes, we have.
And do most projects, or did they recommend we set up a separate reviewer privilege who can approve pull requests, but isn't technically a maintainer? I mean, all the ones I've been directly involved with have all used basically maintainer as the final reviewer, right? Anybody could review, but the maintainer had to do the final review and check off. And that,
right. So there's a couple of approaches. What you suggested would potentially work is adding another tier, but you actually don't need that. I mean, you really just need the maintainer to know who the reviewers are, right? And to see that the reviewers, gave a thumbs up on the, a sufficient number of reviewers gave a thumbs up on a pull request before they merge it. And the maintainer then doesn't even necessarily have to do a thorough review, right? Because they can trust this set of reviewers.
okay, so it doesn't need to be a formal rank. Well, effectively, you have that classification, but it's just not a formal rank in the system, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Although with the automation stuff, repo maintenance has become, again, what you need to do is more automated, but there's a lot of PRs to retire now. So if you look, there's like 150 odd PRs, 150, 160 PRs across all the across the dozen repos we have. And each one is like has, or most of them have automated responses, but a person has to go in and go click, 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 and check it and go, yes. So there is a bit of overhead in that. And again, that automation system was put in for good reasons, which is to make sure that external packages and versions and that sort of thing are getting updated properly. But it leads to a lot of semi-mechanical work, but where you can't be, you have to know something to be able to do the mechanical work. And right now, that's only the maintainers. Having reviewers who could click through that as well might be good for us. And if they all right, that's a good, really good point, Stephen. Let me discuss that with Mark today. We have another round on this today. So let me discuss with him and get his input as well. And so the recommendation was either trusted reviewers, or you could do a reviewer rank such that the maintainers themselves can just go, yes, I trust that, or they could go take a quick look as opposed to having to do the extensive review themselves. Okay, got it.
Correct. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments on that one? All right, we may have some concrete changes to either declare or vote on next week. Like I say, Mark and I have been discussing this, which actually brings us to the next one I want to talk about, which is the code repository structure. So right now, as everyone can see, we have a very flat structure in that every project gets its own repo. Okay. So all the things having to do with, vendor adapter layers are, a set of, 4 or 5 repos. Everything having to do with storage is a set of 4, set of 3 or 4 repos, etc. For some of these, we're discussing whether it would make sense to have fewer repos and use the directory structure to segregate out the various parts of the API, or the various kinds of adapters you need, or features that all go together, right? And these are things where it's either a specialization of the general idea. So, NVIDIA, Marvell, Intel, AMD, and, Dream Big, and so on. If you were going to do an adaptation to that vendor's hardware, and there could be multiple of those, right? Because the hardware changes over time. Versus having those be flat and separate repos. And with the flat and separate repos, you can end up with some circular dependencies, and you can end up with some what goes with what, and you're effectively building that hierarchy with the naming convention, right? So now the naming convention effectively becomes a directory structure for a person to understand what goes with what. Having that be in the tool itself and in the structure itself has that's typically been so there are projects run both ways that I've seen. And once you hit 30 or 40 repos, it can become challenging to understand all of the dependencies and so on. So anyway, we were discussing this yesterday as to, and I was curious if anyone had any preferences for this. I mean, are there arguments for the current structure, or would people like to see it different? Or is it 6 of one, half a dozen another? You're buying different, it's just different problems. It's not better or worse. It's just different. Mark, anything to add? I saw you joined.
No, nothing to add. I think you covered the two different ways that are currently being done. It's just a matter of figuring out what makes the most sense and how we can eliminate any conflicts that we're battling our way through off and on.
All right, so we'll think about which way it would be, best going forward, and if we have to make a big change, we'll make the big change. Okay. All right, so I think we will discuss with the board again whether we hire someone to do the lab software maintenance. So, Murtry, I believe you were the one who brought this up before. And there's a certain, getting the essentially maintaining the software that's in the lab at the right revision, the build system, the loading the boards and all that. I think we could have someone help on that, and also we're going to need the at some point allocation software and so on, but to share the resources. We're not at that point, but hopefully we will end up there. So we will bring that one up. Does anyone object to bringing that up as a use of our budget and as a recommendation for what we should do?
Not an objection, but I'm just thinking out loud here. We have Hurricane. They said they have a bunch of services. We may want to look at that. That may be least overhead for us because we are already invested with them. So Mircha might have already looked at that. So Mircha, you know what exactly you are looking for there? If it is lab related and maintaining various version of so-called standard software, I'm assuming Hurricane can do that. But if it is things that we are using in our repos and then any changes we need to upstream and things like that, that becomes regular OPI development. If we can't be hiring software engineers because we as a, all the companies, we are not putting enough people, then this may be like a weird way of solving that problem. So maybe these two need to be separate.
Yeah, and this wouldn't be to do, direct development. This would be to basically make sure that all the supporting software. So I like let's look at Hurricane Electric Services and see what they have available. Who has the contact with them? Is that you, Murcia?
It would be Sridhar. So
yeah, so I want to clarify here. What exactly, can you give an example of the software that we are referring here? Is it our upstream software that we are relying? For example, Asim initiated this discussion. So he mentioned the list of the upstream projects that we are kind of using. We want to ensure that our projects that depend on these kind of upstream projects are working. So he suggested the idea of also using the internship budget to do that. Is this the same topic, or it's a different lab software that we are
topic? But intern, this isn't an intern job. mean,
No,
the
he said the budget.
problem
He the budget to use that.
okay, so the problem with interns is somebody's got to hold their hand, and that can be as much work. Again, interns are a mixed blessing because
No, I'm only referring to the budget part here, the internship budget part to do the maintenance part kind of thing.
you know, if we can use that budget for the code maintenance, but for example, if we have you know, a VPN gateway code to get into the lab and access the boards, who's going to maintain that software? If we have you know, if we had any kind of scheduling or resource allocation software, if we have an automated build system, I mean, there's a bunch of what I call utility software for running a lab, and I'm actually not a deep expert in that, right? You know, that's never been one of my day jobs. But there's a whole bunch of utility software that you need just to make the lab function. And that,
well, and another piece that was important and is just, you know, tedious for us to do is, you know, keeping up on security updates, operating system updates on all of these servers.
Yep. Okay, I can check with Hurricane if they do anything like that.
yeah, and just yeah, I mean, just keeping, you know, the Linux up to date is work somebody has to do, right? We don't yet have AI ops systems that can really do that. Everyone likes to talk about it, but I haven't seen a system that can really do that outside of a fairly big, expensive installation that actually has a bunch of people running it. It's just fewer people than you would otherwise need. So, you know, that there's not an automation hasn't hit the point where you can just say, keep all these Linuxes up to date to a piece of software and you're done. You know, 10 years I expect to see that, but not immediately.
But the question is, all of this is within the scope of the lab machines, right? We are not looking for somebody to come and maintain any of our code.
Yeah. But no, the scope is just the lab.
Okay.
We're more like IT services.
Yeah.
Mircha, could you say that again?
Like IT services.
Yeah, understood. Yeah.
Okay.
So if not Hurricane, can I explore other vendors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see what's possible and available.
Correct.
And if people know something, you know, just reach out to Sridhar and you know, share with him, hey, go look at these guys because, you know, we know they do a good job, either because your company uses them or a previous company used them and you were happy and everyone was happy. And let's see if there's if that's possible. I mean, one standard way this is done is, again, just directly hire a contractor. And
Correct.
you specify the set of jobs and, you know, you pay the effectively the per unit work salary, and that's it. But let's see if this is possible, because I still think it's a good idea. And on reflection over the holidays, you know, I wanted to bring that up again and see if there was other input.
Yeah, I'll try to combine both this lab software and also the Asim's proposal he had a month.
It's the same one. It's the same one. It's just, and again, we could try interns. The problem with an intern is interns need a lot of supervision.
True. So we'll stick to the vendors kind of a thing and see if again you made a right point, Joe. If anybody in the call, you know, somebody who can do these things, please let me know.
Okay. All right. So, next topic. so direction and planning. You know, we have so a few POCs in progress, right? So we want to do whatever we can as TSC to let those succeed. And again, the new EVPN CNI gateway repo is an example of that. We got those. We're getting those guys unblocked by creating the new repo. Without without a lot of mess. We just did that yesterday afternoon. But it's really a two-part question. One is what do we want to cover in the TSC? And it can be next meeting, it can be the next in meetings, it can be just long-term, what are the sets of topics? I want to open that up to people. And the second one is, and we don't have to resolve this today, obviously, but what should the strategic goals of OPI be for 2024? Where do we want to end up in December? I mean, again, obviously support the POCs. We want to have those POCs be demonstratable, have a set of APIs that go with those POCs, have those APIs where we can say, if you want to do this kind of thing, if you want to do Nginx, here's all what you do, and here's the OPI APIs. If you want to have a VPN to CNI gateway in your DPU to let your containers on your server connect in the magic VPN ways, then here's what you do, right? And here's the base libraries you need. If you wanted to build on that, you could. And look, here's a real world project that uses these APIs to do, a version of that idea. And that's the path we're down right now. So just as a bulleted list and brainstorm, what are all the things we want to try to cover or accomplish this year? And then for the upcoming TSC meetings, what topics do we need to cover? I mean, obviously we'll have some status updates, and we'll have discussions like the maintainer critical mass, where the reviewer is a great suggestion, kind of having the either formal or informal reviewer level is in there. But so I'll open it up. All right, let me ask the corollary question. Is there anything from 2023 that we need to carry forward and resolve, other than the topics I've already brought up, which were kind of on our minds at the end of last year?
Yeah, I thought the big one was the EVPN work, and what we were doing there was the big one I thought was unresolved, but it looked like it got merged, and
Yeah.
we got what we're doing there. So
yeah, we're just going to give them a repo, and because that's the current flat structure we're using, and let them throw the code in. Demetrius already basically has the code ready to go. It's just mechanical. It's a bit of mechanical and approval process, and Mark's all over that.
Yeah. We did talk in the POC meeting yesterday or the day before about when are we going to be ready to start ordering the second set of hardware that we can use to schedule demos or schedule people doing development work in the lab itself rather than in their own spaces. And when are we going to be ready for that? We're close to having the lab up and ready to play with, but to do CI/CD, we're getting there. But in order to do phase, I don't know if it was phase 0 and phase 1 or 1 and 2, but in order to do the next phase, we have to order more hardware. And so we'll want to have that discussion at some point. Are we ready to do that? Do we want to go spend the money to do that? Those sorts of things.
Yeah, so that's a good one. So Elad, for the use cases you're seeing, does the use case group have a proposal for we need the following set of software and API features for a particular use case that is emerging as a strong one? Is there a set of software we can actually do?
Well, that's exactly why we were talking to Ion, because Ion was the only one willing to contribute code on both the distributed UPF, which is a very interesting topic, and their use of DPUs, IPUs to funnel traffic and data towards AI engines. I think those two topics are very hot, especially the latter, and that is why we're engaging with them.
Right.
On top of that,
Yeah.
I think that our discussions with European telcos and enterprises, hopefully through organizations such as Silva, would lead us to more use cases of this nature that actually generate interest in the enterprise and telco market for us to follow.
Okay. So the ION use case is interesting, and clearly they want a variety of DPUs, and the cleanest way to use a variety of DPUs is to have as much commonality in the APIs as you can. So they clearly see the need. I agree. So what do we need? So the question is, what do we need to develop to support ION? Now, we've asked for the ION documentation so that we can understand what they actually need. And because it's a little hard to guess, right? Because again, this won't be ION software directly as such, right? It's not the ION network. This is a device attached to the ION network that's going to do a particular job in a use case enabled by the ION network. But to understand what needs to be done for that, the DPU attach or DPU IPU attached to the ION network, we kind of have to know what they want. And I haven't seen a document come through yet. So
Joe, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, again, there are two major use cases: distributed UPF and using the DPU IPU as a pipeline towards AI engines. And we're getting code for the first one, is including a README file that will explain how the code was structured and what's the mindset behind it.
Okay, so when is that? When do we get that code?
I believe it should be this month.
Okay, so they've got to come. So we need a request for a repo, we need a request for a bunch of things, right?
Yeah, once we get it, we need to figure out how we want to structure it, because their
Well,
main ask is going to be, hey, we did this at 10 gig, and we showed that it works. Can you guys work on it, attach it to other functionalities such as security, and boost the speed up to 100 gig, for example?
so again, that's all fair. There's a mechanical piece there. So that's great. That's all great, actually. So there's a mechanical piece there of, and so you think the README will be sufficient documentation. Have you seen the README?
No, but it will reflect what we had discussed with them in conversations, where they dove into the structure of both the deployment type and the functionality. And
Yeah.
I think that is good enough to make us understand, to help us understand
Ooh.
what they're actually going for and how is it structured.
Okay. So, not quite. So here's the problem. So that's all great for understanding the concept, and I agree with you on all the concepts and so on. The question is, what additional repos are needed in OPI to support all that? And the answer might be none. So you're talking like it's none. We get this UPF repo, and it's all inclusive, and we're done. And now we have OPI UPF, and now we
Right.
could use that a bunch of other places. But how do okay, so I guess we'll wait and see if that's the case. So, I personally don't believe it. I think there's additional work that'll have to be done by somebody, and we're going to have to somebody's going to have to volunteer. We're going to have to motivate people to do that work, or tell the NTT, and I guess, what is it, Fujitsu, hey, you guys have to go contribute this and this as well, right? And
Let's get it first, and let's see what we're missing, and if we have gaps, and then we can figure it out. But the idea is,
are you going to request? So, as the use case group, are you going to request the new repo? Are they going to come in and basically put in a request for the repo? Have you talked to them mechanically about how that?
no, we did not discuss the mechanical procedure.
All right, so we need that. So we need that procedure.
Okay.
I mean, and again, I agree with you at the high level, completely. The question was, how do we actually execute that?
Yeah,
So
fair enough.
It's not a concept problem. It's not a concept problem, or a understanding the value, or understanding kind of high level. It's mechanically, what are all the things we have to do to make that real? That's where we are now.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. And again, I was hoping that there was a set of documentation beyond just a README, beyond just a GitHub README, that said, here's how this piece fits in, and here's what this piece is, and here's what this piece needs. But if we don't get that, we can work with it. But that's what we're going to have to understand, right? Because we may have to alter alter APIs or alter other repos, and there's certainly going to be an adapter layer that's needed to put it on the various DPUs, right? I mean, each DPU probably, and if the adapter layers we already have, the so-called bridges, don't have everything you need, they have to all be updated with common calls, and then you link in the bridge for your board, and now the UPF code will run. So, like I said, I agree with you in concept. It's only a question of practically what are all the pieces we need to actually do this. So, Mark, we're going to need to plan on a repo for these guys, and I guess we can reach out to them. I mean, we have contacts there. We can reach out to them on on how they want to actually proceed. Okay.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I've already been communicating with them.
Oh, have you? Okay. All right. Anything else? Good discussion. And then the AI part, have they proposed, so Laud or Mark, have they proposed anything concrete?
Not on, I haven't seen anything on AI.
The AI data mover? Laud, have they communicated with you anything concrete on that?
I know that use case well, but this is considered to be a step 3 or step 4, not a step 1.
Yep.
Good. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I know all the concepts for these things. This is more of a execution, so let me label it that way. And okay, so Julia was unable to join because I was going to revisit lifecycle and provisioning and see if there's anything we need there. So she's still the interim chair. We have our fingers crossed that everything resolves and our and Gal gets back with us as soon as possible. And then the traveling pox was basically part of that discussion. Okay. So I should put here, we also want, okay, complete. All right, so for the current POX, is there anything anyone needs or anything missing or any support, any, GitHub support or anything else?
So again, by GitHub support, what's
So do people need repos, reviews, found an API that's missing in trying to build the POC? Like, it'd be great if this were a common API. Anything at all. Is there anything needed at all? Rethinking of how we have things structured, because it just don't work the way people thought it would when it was proposed, or when the common libraries were built.
right? I think there will be some things that we run into when some of the things we ran into for the OCP demo in provisioning the different cards that we'll run into as we bring this lab up and start getting these cards and trying to put them in a CI/CD pipeline. There'll be things we run into, like how do you get a consistent image on all of these cards, and what's the method we're going to do to image a card with an OS and software.
Is there
done
from the Nginx OCP demo POC bring up? Is there a list of the new things needed from that? Like what? Take the lessons learned and turn it into here's how you solve that problem.
Yeah, there is a lessons learned, and we've discussed those things in the POC group. The POC group is kind of backed up to okay, let's get the lab up and running, and what are the tasks needed to do that, and then we'll tackle, once we get the equipment all connected and talking to one another, then it's going to be okay, now we do this next step. So I don't think we have written that yet, but I think it is something that is going to be necessary.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else?
So Joe, coming out of the EVPN conversations at the end of the year, we started to touch on, what the Kubernetes ecosystem on a DPU should or could look like, and what kind of an opinion OPI should have on that. So I would hope in 2024 we can go down that rabbit hole a little deeper and talk about CNIs and whether OPI should have an opinion on a CNI or a set of CNIs that we provide support for through our APIs, or whether we should stay out of that domain. I mean, people like Boris have sort of said, well, that's application developers' problem, not OPI's problem. I'm not sure I agree with that position, but it is a position I've heard voiced here. So I'd like to have those conversations over the next quarter or two to decide what role OPI could or should play in the middleware that runs on a DPU. I'm not sure that conversation should just be confined to the API working group. I think it needs to be elevated at times to the TSC.
Yep. No, that's a good one.
I do know that in some of the POC work that either the POC group is doing or even companies like F5 are doing independently, we are pushing into those areas. And so I hope to come back with findings and suggestions, but we can front run some of that, right? Just with our own thinking here.
Mm-hmm.
And then a second area that I think the POC work will also start to get into this year is that as we get the basic application deployment like Nginx working, or other examples, we're going to try to reach in and use some of the hardware offloads. And when we get into cross-card hardware offload, we're going to start to expose areas where OPI does need to provide, some sort of a consistent API view of common offloads so that they can be used consistently by an application.
Yeah, I mean that was clearly one of the original goals, and one of the purposes of the three or four bridge directories that were created was one step in that direction. So I agree with you.
Yeah, it just felt to me like that space is so large. It needs to be focused by actual POC use cases that force us to wrestle with the actual details on the ground, rather than just trying to philosophically or academically try to solve the entire tunnel and endpoint space problem, right?
Yeah.
And the vendors have gone into different corners, but what we're really after is the usable part of it that most people need, which is in fact common to all the vendors, and a way to represent that through an API in a common way. But I think POCs can really focus that work in certain areas. So hopefully a POC could come back to the API group and say, hey, here's this problem we have across these 3 or 4 vendors' cards. Can you help us with the API to address this?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was talking about with the ION stuff as well. Are there a set of things like that, just like you're describing, Tim? And so I consider the ION one sort of another pocket, if you will, just like the EVPN and just like the other things.
Yep,
Some of the ION folks, one of the questions they've asked me and wanted to dig into is how did I go about getting a new OS on the card using the OPI APIs, and what was that process, because they're struggling with it as well. So across different vendors' cards.
Well, this is good. Okay. Yeah. All right. Anything else? These are all good. People finally woke up from the first half of the meeting. I'm happy about that. All right. Any other topics? And again, you can send by email to the email list if you have additional ones, or you can put it in the TSC Slack channel, and then we can, copy it into here, as additional notes. All right. Excellent. And then I think next week what I want to do is line up Julia to come back and talk about lifecycle and provisioning again. And I want to do it from the point of view of what do we need to close on for lifecycle and provisioning. And a lot of, and Mark, if you're talking to these guys, let's get a concrete list of what we have to actually do. What do we actually have to do to let the Ion guys come in and start contributing mechanically? And let's get them to do that as soon as possible, because we're not going to know exactly what problems to solve until they try it. All right. Any final thoughts from anyone? Otherwise, welcome to 2024, and you guys are all great. So it's great working with you. All right. With that,
first meeting of the year, Joe. We'll get more momentum as we go.
yeah, I know. It's no worries at all. I'm it's taking 2 weeks off is great, but then you have to recover from it.
Yes.
So, all right, guys. Thank you very much. And meeting on next week is on. And if you have agenda items, again, just post them in the TSC list or agenda item requests, and I'll get those incorporated. Otherwise, I'll come up with a set of topics for us to go over. And again, if some of these practical things, we can get some proposals, even if it's only a couple of lines in Slack, we can build from there. All right. Again, thank you, and I'll end the call. Bye.
Thank you much.